Mark, I'm not trying to be a Luddite here. I'm not saying that AI isn't extraordinary in what it's capable of doing. I'm just
You sort of are, though.
Well, yes, I am kind of saying that.
The AI fix a digital zoo. Smart machines, what will they do? Flies to Mars or bake a bad cake? World domination, a silly mistake. Bots with brains.
Hello and welcome to episode 72 of the AI Fix, your weekly dive headfirst into the bizarre and sometimes mind-boggling world of artificial intelligence. My name's Mark Stockley.
And I'm Graham Cluley.
Now, Graham, I think we've had some feedback.
Yes, we have. Michael Crook has dropped us a line on Blue Sky, and he says, "Thanks for the great episodes. I've got some feedback," insert robot feedback noise, "about this joke you keep making about AI taking all of the coders' jobs." And he says, "That may roll off my back like water off a duck's, but there are likely some really stressed juniors out there. And at that age, stuff like this is likely really distressing." He just says he wants to remind us that we have some reach and what we say matters a bit, and that there's heaps of opportunities for motivated, talented junior programmers. So hopefully we don't scare them all off. What do you reckon, Mark? What are your thoughts on that bit of feedback?
Well, I hear where you're coming from, Michael. I just don't agree.
Rather like the godfather of AI, I feel like I am concerned about the future for programmers with AI getting so good at it.
It's not just programmers. So I've spoken to CEOs in the tech space.
Yep.
I've spoken to partners in the legal space, and they're both saying the same thing, which is that AI is absolutely going to affect, for them, the recruitment of juniors. The CEO said to me something very much like, working with an AI right now is very much like working with a junior. You know, you give them fairly simple chunks of work to do. Maybe they struggle with it in a way that you weren't expecting. You've got to do lots and lots of hand-holding. The difference is that the AI gets it done in hours where the junior maybe takes days to do it. So I don't think we're alone in saying that this is going to affect programming. I think that's a very, very widely held belief.
Yes.
The benchmarks that every time a new AI model comes out, they make a real deal of how good that model is at programming because they're trying to make models that are good at programming.
Yeah. I decided I was going to ask an AI what it thought about all this. I asked one AI and it said, the skills you're learning coding, they're increasingly valuable. Of course, shouldn't be complacent, it said. There's new roles and possibilities. And I thought, that's very upbeat. And then I turned to Grok and it said, absolutely. Programmers are dropping like flies in some corners. And that was this week's feedback.
Graham, what have you got for us today?
I'm going to be talking about corporate America's obsession with AI.
And I'll be looking at where your words go when you use an AI.
But first, the news.
GPT-5 trained on phrases from adult websites.
Police warn of AI home intruder prank.
Jeff Bezos says we'll have AI data centers in space within 20 years.
Man has kung fu fight with robot.
OpenAI releases AgentKit.
Chinese scientists reveal the spookiest robot face yet.
So, Graham, new research has uncovered that GPT-5 and GPT-OSS were trained, amongst other things, on phrases from adult websites. And my first thought on reading that was, there are phrases on adult websites? Anyway, it turns out there are. A few months ago, OpenAI released GPT-OSS, so that's its first open source model since 2019.
Yes.
But while it released the model weights, that's all the numbers that go into making up the neural network, it was quite cagey about what the model had actually been trained on, and there's been a lot of discussion about that. So researchers have been trying to reverse engineer it ever since to see what the training corpus was.
Yeah.
So at the heart of a language model, there is a dictionary of tokens. I think with GPT-OSS, there's about 200,000 tokens.
Yes.
And the size of each token's mathematical representation tends to reflect how frequently it appeared in the training data.
Right.
The folks at file.net have written about the fattest tokens they've found in GPT-OSS, and they said that Mandarin speakers will have understood that the above, which was a list of tokens, contains an unwholesome sublist of spammy and adult-oriented website terms, with some being too explicit to make the list here.
Oh.
So it turns out that OpenAI's secret sauce is that it is secretly saucy.
So a few weeks ago, we described how firefighters in the Philippines were very disappointed to find that a truck fire they'd been called out to extinguish had turned out instead to be a hoax after they fell for an AI-generated photo. Well, it seems it's not just the fire service that is finding AI to be a ruddy nuisance. So what's happened is this. TikToker Sasha Mooney decided to trick her partner into thinking that a homeless person had shown up at their door.
Oh, I think I've seen this.
Have you?
Does she send her partner pictures of the homeless person around the house?
This is the prank. People are generating AI images of homeless people who've shown up at the house while their partner is out and saying, oh, this guy's come round, claims to know you, I've let him in, he's sat here, he's having a beer, oh, he's decided to have a snooze in the bed, etc. And your partner's freaking out.
I had no idea this was AI generated.
Well, apparently it is. So TikToker Sasha Mooney, she did this and her partner panicked and called the police. And so there's also images out there of the police going around. And the police are getting fed up with this. Irish TikTok user Daniel Redmond, he tried something similar. He says, oh, my poor mother, I thought I'd get her with the AI homeless man in the house trend. So he also sent her a message on WhatsApp before she got home. And she responded saying, why did you let me in the house? This is my f***ing house. And police in Ireland have now warned of what they call a trending prank. They said, already on a number of occasions, this has resulted in the emergent deployment to an ultimately hoax report of burglary.
I feel like we need to get a few things straight here. So
Okay.
Let's do a public service announcement. Firstly, it's not a crime if your partner lets a homeless person into your house. Some people might even consider that an act of kindness.
Yes.
Calling the police may be an extreme reaction.
But if you're worried that they've duped your partner, the message that people receive is, this guy says he's a friend of yours and said you wouldn't mind if he got into your bed and, made himself eggs on toast or whatever it is that he's doing, then you might be alarmed. You might think, oh, my partner's in danger because this person is lying to them.
I feel like it's also worth saying, if you like your partner, maybe don't try and trick them into thinking that there's a homeless person in your house to the extent that they feel the need to call the police.
I think that's an excellent point.
So like all good Bond villains, Jeff Bezos wants to build a moon base.
Is he planning to do it with a robot spider, which only has 6 legs?
And like all good Bond villains, he can't resist telling the protagonist about his slightly unhinged plans. Well, Bezos found himself being interviewed by John Elkann at Italian Tech Week in Turin. And Elkann's quite handsome. He looks, he'd make a decent Bond.
Right.
Now, I don't know if Bezos had Elkann balancing above a swimming pool full of sharks or if he was about to be cut in half by a laser, but Jeff Bezos started to tell him how useful the moon was.
It's hard to know exactly when. It's 10 plus years, but I bet it's not more than 20 years. We're going to start building these giant gigawatt data centers in space. So these giant training clusters, those will be better built in space because we have solar power there 24/7, and the solar power there are no clouds and no rain, no weather. So you can build. We will be able to beat the cost of terrestrial data centers in space in the next couple of decades.
Right.
He said he plans to use the moon as a fuel depot because he can extract hydrogen, I guess, from the water on the moon. So he's going to use this as a sort of petrol station in space.
And when do you think we'll be living in space?
Well, I believe we'll have, in the next kind of couple of decades, I believe there will be millions of people living in space. That's how fast this is going to accelerate.
Well, meanwhile, let's turn to another Bond villain, Elon Musk. Of course, he has once again decided to remind us that he's building the future and possibly the end of humanity, one robot at a time. Last week, he posted a video of an Optimus humanoid robot. And, it's having a kung fu fight, Mark.
What is it with the way that they show off these robots in these videos? There are so many ways that you could demo how useful that robot is without giving it an assault rifle or having it in a kung fu fight or doing something like that.
I think the thing is that someone like Elon Musk, he doesn't think it's particularly manly folding laundry.
I'll handle the manly stuff. The robot can fold the laundry.
So, Mark, you're into your martial arts, aren't you? Maybe you should
Yes, I am.
check out this video to see what you think of its fighting style.
Oh, it just reloaded its fists like Henry Cavill does.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that this wasn't... I think maybe this is just watched a Superman film.
So apparently this is showing off Optimus's latest self-learning capabilities. So it's not being told exactly how to move. In short, it's learning how to fight with this other chap who is a human, and it's learning by itself. What could possibly be wrong with that? That sounds fine. And what isn't said, of course, is how much of this Kung Fu clip was really real-time autonomy and how much was a choreographed demo.
Oh, yes, they do like to have somebody off camera.
Yes. So keep your skeptical glasses on, folks, especially when it's Elon who's sharing the videos.
So as you know, we live in the era of AI agents. That's AIs that are part of the workforce. But we've really only tipped our toe in the water so far. So we are in what I like to think of as the plumbing stage. So you can build agents, but it's not as simple as it's going to be once we've hammered out all the kinds of tools and protocols we need.
Yeah.
So we need to know, how do agents talk to things, and how do they talk to each other, and how do we build them efficiently? And we've got the model context protocol from Anthropic. That's what agents use to talk to things. And we've got the agent-to-agent protocol, which I think came from Google, and that's how agents can talk to each other. And now we've got AgentKit from OpenAI, which is a way to build them efficiently. So it's a drag and drop interface. Think Microsoft Visio. Have you ever used Microsoft Visio?
Oh, a long time ago. Yes.
Basically, you drag and drop things like MCP servers and agents and if-else statements and file searches into a flowchart, and voila, you've just made your colleague of 8 years redundant.
And they've called this thing AgentKit.
Yes.
Is that a reference to Knight Rider with David Hasselhoff? Sorry, now I'm referencing shows of the early 80s. There's probably only about 2% of our audience.
Another relatable example for our audience. I'm pretty sure KIT had 2 T's. Knight Industries 2000, that's what it stood for.
Nerd. Now, Mark, Aheadform is a Chinese robotics startup, and it says it is dedicated to the development of high-end, ultra-bionic humanoid robots.
Sorry, what's ultra-bionic? How can you be more bionic than bionic?
I think if everyone is claiming to have bionic robots, then it's understandable for investment reasons. You might want to claim that you have ultra-bionic.
I think they should try and be fabulous and try and be bionique with an IQUE on the end rather than an IC.
Well, these are apparently super realistic, ultra-lifelike humanoid robots with soft skin, which they hope can bridge the gap between humans and machines. Now, I'm not sure if that's a gap that I want bridged, necessarily.
Was there a specific gap that they had in mind?
They've released a video of what they call the Origin M1 only head, which is a phrase I've learnt to regret Googling. But check out this. Well, it's basically a head, and it's a robot head. It apparently has up to 25 brushless micromotors embedded under its synthetic skin, enabling it to blink, twitch, nod, even glance around.
Yeah. No.
No, as in you don't want one of those.
No.
So it is eerily lifelike, but very clearly not a human head because there's no body, but it is twitching and looking around and moving its eyes. And you think, oh my goodness, that's much more realistic.
You know what lifelike robots look like in films?
Yes.
It looks like that. That's where we are. We have achieved science fiction parity, at least in the disembodied phase. And it is surprising how many films involving androids involve the android eventually ending up as some sort of disembodied head.
Links in the show notes. So, Mark, I want to talk about obsession. Not the perfume by Calvin Klein, not that kind of obsession. I want to talk about corporate America's latest obsession.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, with artificial intelligence. They're crazy for AI, aren't they?
Is it just corporate America?
Okay. I think they're the ones leading the charge.
Yeah, they're spending the money.
You know, I want to go out on a limb here, and I want to suggest that maybe AI is a little bit overhyped.
Really? I couldn't agree less, to be honest.
Okay. All right. Okay.
This is going to be interesting.
So according to an analysis by the FT, the Financial Times, 374 companies in the S&P 500, so these are the biggest companies in America, they've been banging on about artificial intelligence in their earning calls over the last year?
They have to, really, though, don't they?
Well, that's the thing. Do they have to, or don't they? The FT, they apparently used some AI tools. Well, there's the problem already, right? I think we can question this, but the FT apparently used...
Did they use some AI tools to prove that AI is overhyped and nobody's using AI tools? Oh, the irony.
They used some AI tools to identify mentions of AI in SEC 10K filings and earnings transcripts.
Yeah.
And then they categorized each mention. So, already I'm wondering if they screwed up, right? If they're just looking for mentions of AI, it could have been artificial insemination or something else like that instead of actual artificial intelligence. Who knows? Some of the companies talking about AI were maybe a little bit unexpected.
Yeah.
So Coca-Cola, for instance, are talking about AI. It's like, really? Is that for artificial flavorings? I'm not sure. Lululemon sportswear.
Maybe they're going to use those very, very lifelike robots that are going to bridge the gap.
Others are a bit more predictable, like military supplier Huntington Ingalls. They're delivering warships or whatever it is they're delivering. Of course, they're going to be into AI or killer drones.
Yeah.
The point is, 3/4 of America's biggest companies are thinking AI is a big enough deal that they need to talk about it during their earnings calls. And 87% of the references to AI in these earning calls are completely and utterly positive about AI. No concerns whatsoever. It's all sunshine, it's roses, it's robots, it's flamethrowers, it's everything that we know is good about AI. But what's interesting is an analysis was also done of what these companies are telling the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, in their official regulatory filings. As a company, you need to be pathologically honest about the risks which your business faces. So investors can't say later, I didn't realise I might lose my money, or I didn't realise this was all just a crock of shit. And suddenly, when you read these documents, these regulatory filings, it's a completely different story. Because more than half of the S&P 500 are citing cybersecurity as a major AI risk. Others are worried that their AI initiatives might simply fail. And here's the thing, Mark.
Yeah.
They mostly do fail. An MIT study has found that 95% of AI workplace pilots, I don't think they just mean Microsoft Copilot.
I was thinking flying planes. Please reassure me it's not that.
Right, we don't have...
95% of AI pilots fail.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because basically, planes these days, they fly by computer. You just get a human just to do the twiddly bits at the end, which the passengers like to imagine a human is more capable of doing than an AI.
Yeah.
At what point will that be completely automated?
As soon as possible.
An MIT study has found that 95% of AI workplace pilots fail. 95%. I guess you could spin that. You could say 5% success rate. But when looked at from the other end of the telescope, that is not a great score for AI. So MIT's State of AI in Business 2025 report, its executive summary reads as follows. This is it verbatim.
Yeah.
It says, despite $30 to $40 billion worth of enterprise investment into Gen AI, this report uncovers a surprising result in that 95% of organizations are getting zero return. So in short, AI is making money for the billionaires who sell AI. It isn't making money, at least not yet, for the companies who use it. Which leads to the obvious question, why is this
why
not...
were they surprised by that? That's the obvious question. Have you ever worked in an organisation?
Yes, a long time ago.
If you walked into the average organisation and you said, here, I've got a wonder pill, and if everybody takes it, they're all going to get 10 times more productive, they would get together a committee of people and they would ponder on it, and they would all have different ideas about how to use it, and one of them would throw it in a river and somebody would put it in a box. Like, I'm not at all surprised. But what would we expect? This is going to take time. We'll probably need to ask an AI, actually. If a company is successful, it's generally quite good at repeating the same thing over and over again. Like Google, very good at building a search engine, failed miserably at almost everything else it tried.
Spectacles.
Well, and everything else. Do you remember Google Wave?
Google Wave, yes.
That was going to revolutionize the way that we all communicate with each other.
Google Buzz, that was their other attempt at doing a Google Wave, wasn't it? They've done a whole series of Google Waves.
There was a social network at one point.
You might be onto something, Mark, because MIT's boffins say it's not because the AI isn't clever enough. They say it's because the tools cannot integrate with existing company systems. Now, AI obviously has a brilliant solution to all of that, which is to nuke the existing customer system and do the whole job itself. Now, what's more, some companies are worried that they could face massive legal settlements as a result of AI. So Facebook's parent company, Meta, they've spent billions building what they call a super intelligence team. But they've warned that it could face massive legal settlements over using copyrighted materials to train its models, because basically their attitude was, we'll ask permission later. We'll just scoop up everyone else's information.
Yeah. So Anthropic, I think, have just had to pay out $1.5 billion for copyright violation. I think they used pirated copies of books. I think they were allowed under the fair use provision to sort of violate the copyright of the author. But because they'd used pirated works rather than the originals, they got fined for that. But it's cost them something like 10% of their most recent injection of funds. So all these investors have pumped a load of money into Anthropic, and immediately 10% has gone out the door just to settle a legal case.
Yeah. And we know from that report you spoke about in the news that lots of Chinese websites appear to be being, well, at least Chinese adult websites appear to be being plundered for information to train AI systems.
Yeah.
Pepsi, right? They've offered similar warnings. They've basically said, we might have nicked a whole load of books and music to teach our AI, and someone might sue us for that. And court documents show that Meta employees were chatting about downloading pirated books from sites when they knew it was illegal. So all kinds of companies are at risk of getting burnt. And an example just arrived this week. The Australian government just paid Deloitte, one of the big four consultancy firms, $290,000 to review their welfare compliance system. And for that money, they were sent a 237-page report.
Yeah.
Now, I've never written a 237-page report. If someone were to ask me to write a 237-page report, I can tell you precisely how I would write 237 pages. But I'm not Deloitte, right? And so you kind of expect Deloitte to do a little bit better, because it turns out, of course, that report showed strong signs of being written with AI. It fabricated quotes from federal court judges. It made up academic papers that didn't exist, even cited a book supposedly written by a real, genuine Sydney University professor, which was fine, apart from the book was entirely made up and it was about a topic which was outside of her expertise. So it instantly rang alarm bells. The chap who discovered all this and spotted the errors, he said these were the kind of things that a first-year university student would be in deep trouble for.
Yeah. The question is, though, how did he find out? Did he read? I mean, you're saying, you know what you would do if you were faced with the prospect of writing a 270-page report. If I was faced with the prospect of reading a 270-page report, I would stuff it straight into Claude and I would say, summarize this in a paragraph for me.
So Deloitte tried to blame human error.
Yeah.
But of course, it wasn't a human who made up those entirely imaginary court cases and books that didn't exist. And eventually they admitted that they'd used an AI.
Yeah.
And this is Deloitte that you're talking about. This isn't like Graham Cluley and Mark Stockley.
I thought you were trying to tell me that companies aren't using AI. Seems to me that Deloitte are really embracing AI.
But it hasn't made them any money, Mark. It hasn't made them any money. It's cost them money as a consequence.
But how do you know this one cost them money? Do you imagine this is the only 270-page report that they've used an AI to create?
Well, you know what? I think anyone who has now got a report from Deloitte will be a little bit more suspicious.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is Deloitte actually sells training courses on responsible AI use. So I don't know if people will be signed up. Now, you may think, but surely corporate America has learnt from past mistakes. Well, we have sort of been here before, haven't we? Do you remember this little thing called the metaverse? A thing that Mark Zuckerberg was so convinced about that he renamed his entire company as a result. That's lost them $68 billion since 2020.
He has been pretty quiet on the metaverse of late, hasn't he?
He has. Apparently, it has 900 daily active users at the moment. 900. I've been to Garden Fates, which have been busier than...
Well, look, there you go. Another great opportunity for AI.
So Zucker's laid off thousands of employees because apparently people don't want to strap a great big hunking lump of plastic to their faces, let alone have virtual meetings as legless avatars.
Yep.
Going back further, we had the blockchain mania, of course.
Yep.
Blockchain was going to revolutionize everything. You know, blockchain. Every industry was supposedly going to be transformed. Companies were falling over themselves to add blockchain to their name.
Yep.
There's a drinks company called Long Island Iced Tea Corporation, and it changed its name to Long Blockchain Corporation. That's it.
That wasn't a long meeting, was it? Got it.
They carried on as an iced tea company. They just changed the name. No blockchain product, no blockchain strategy, just the word. The stock price rose 400% overnight.
Wow.
That was during blockchain mania. And something like 90% of all enterprise blockchain projects failed. But that didn't stop everyone piling in because, you know, fear of missing out. What about Second Life? Do you remember Second Life?
Very well, for reasons that you understand perfectly.
20 years ago, we had our bosses falling over themselves, telling us we've got to set up a Second Life virtual office. That's where our customers are going to come and chat with our cartoon avatars. IBM had an entire island in Second Life. Businesses were paying real money for virtual real estate. Where are those offices now, Mark? Where are they?
They're in the metaverse, being visited by as many as 900 people a day.
So why are companies still throwing money at AI based on this? Why are they all talking about AI like it's the second coming, despite this track record of repeatedly failing when it comes to working out what the next big thing is? According to research analyst Haritha Kandabatu, companies aren't guided by strategy, they are guided by the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Some execs are saying they're not asking themselves, what problem am I solving? They're asking, what if my competitor solves this particular thing first? So everyone's doing AI. If we don't do AI, we're going to look stupid. Investors are eating it up.
Yep.
Some companies have seen their stock prices rise just by announcing AI initiatives, not implementing them successfully, not showing results, just talking about AI. Mark, I'm not trying to be a Luddite here. I'm not saying that AI isn't extraordinary in what it's capable of doing. I'm just
You sort of are, though.
Well, yes, I am kind of saying that. But I think there's a disconnect between executives on earning calls who are sounding like we've discovered cold fusion, while simultaneously filing legal documents saying, by the way, this could all blow up in our faces spectacularly. What they're mostly doing is they're just turning on a customer service chatbot.
Yeah.
But, you know, has that really transformed their business? I'm not so sure it has. And when they rush to adopt technology that they can't figure out how to use, that mostly fails, which might involve stolen copyrighted material, could make it easier for criminals to attack them and hack and steal their data, that's not necessarily a good thing. But they're doing it anyway.
But that doesn't mean there isn't something there. So Peter Diamandis, who's the founder of the X Prize and something called the Singularity University, he says technology grows exponentially, but humans and organizations are linear. So he's basically illustrating that there's a disconnect between how quickly technology can develop and how quickly organizations can embrace that technology. And I feel like anyone who's worked in an organization has probably felt that. Most organizations are nowhere near the bleeding edge. I think AI is different from blockchain and different from the metaverse because it's not a technology. It is technology. In the way that silicon wafers have completely changed absolutely everything. Everything's got a computer in it. Everything is a computer now. It will be the same with AI. Instead of being built on silicon wafers, everything is going to be built on AI, which is built on silicon wafers. But that's going to take a very, very long time to work through everything because we're going to have to relearn everything.
So that's what I'm interested in, Mark. When am I getting my jetpack? When am I getting my silver lame jumpsuit? I remember being a kid thinking I'm going to be alive in the year 2001, a space odyssey. When's it going to happen, Mark? Just asking the questions.
So last week, I spoke about the extraordinary power demands of AI.
Yes.
So you remember the big AI companies have plans to bring data centers online in the next few years that are going to draw 60 gigawatts of electricity between them.
Yeah.
So remember, that's the equivalent of 60 meaningful nuclear power plants just to do AI.
Yeah.
Which makes you think, what the hell is all that electricity for? Why does it take so much electricity for an AI to get the number of R's in strawberry wrong? So today we're going to take a journey down the wire. And it starts, Graham, with you prompting your AI with something like, I don't know, how many R's are there in strawberry? Or create a picture of a Renaissance-era glove with 6 fingers. Or create a catchy bluegrass theme tune for my new AI podcast. But what happens next, Graham? Where does it go from there? Well, most of the AIs that we interact with are much too big to fit on your laptop or on your phone, much less actually run at a useful speed on them. So whatever you type into your chatbot doesn't stay where you type it.
No.
It goes down a fibre optic wire at about 2/3 the speed of light in a vacuum and into the cloud. And the really funny thing about the cloud is that it is absolutely nothing at all like a cloud. In fact, it couldn't be more different. So think of a cloud.
Fluffy.
Yep.
Floating around.
Yep. Small, neat, clean,
Pretty.
silent,
Yes.
obvious. It's right there. And more than anything, Graham, in the air.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Now imagine the opposite of that. Imagine a dirty great warehouse with no windows in a top secret location, full of humming black cabinets, throwing out heat like a furnace, sucking up every watt of power from the nearest nuclear power plant, and pulling hundreds of millions of litres from the local river.
And you don't get clouds on the moon, do you, either?
That's right. And until Jeff Bezos creates his data centre on the moon, imagine something that's very much on the ground.
Yes.
Now, about those cabinets. So this big ugly warehouse that you don't know where it is because it's a very, very secret thing is full of humming cabinets. And every cabinet holds dozens of GPU chips. And they're packed so tightly and they run so hot that they have to be bathed in coolant just to survive.
Mm.
And if you've ever built your own computer, and I feel like you probably have, or if you're a gamer, you will already have heard of GPUs.
Is it graphical processing unit?
That's right. And as you might guess from the name, they were originally designed to handle graphics. So the heart of a regular computer like a laptop or your phone is a CPU, a central processing unit. And that's a computer chip that handles different kinds of instructions one at a time at enormously fast speed. But the thing is that CPUs started to struggle with graphics in the late 90s. In order to work out what to show on a single frame of a fast-moving 3D video game, the computer has to draw millions of triangles and textures tens of times a second. So you're trying to push millions of very, very similar maths calculations through the CPU. And in the 90s, the CPUs just couldn't keep up with the games.
No.
And the chip builders worked out that the best way to solve that problem was to create specialized chips that are really good at doing matrix multiplications and vector transformations. And so because of GPUs, all the graphics calculations happened at the same time rather than one after the other. And it happens that this is exactly the kind of parallel maths calculation that deep learning AI models need to do as well. So in the early 2010s, researchers discovered that using GPUs instead of CPUs for AI made them run much, much faster.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because the companies who got into making these kind of chips, initially, you're right, it was for gamers. And then they sort of stumbled almost accidentally into the world of cryptocurrency and mining Bitcoin.
Which also requires very, very similar types of parallel maths, yes.
Exactly. And so they managed to make piles of cash that way. And then they managed to make piles of cash again because it's like, oh, and also AI needs these kind of chips. So, I mean, companies like NVIDIA have done incredibly well when you think of where they began.
Maybe we've got this the wrong way. Maybe AI isn't driving the adoption of GPUs. Maybe all the tech bros were sat around looking at their stacks of GPUs after the crypto bubble burst, and they went, well, what are we going to do with these? Anyway, so whichever way it occurred, data centers are chock full of GPUs doing massive amounts of parallel maths. But remember, when you typed into your AI at the beginning and asked it how many R's there are in strawberry, you didn't type a string of numbers. You typed, or maybe you spoke some words. So before what you typed or said can be fed into the GPU, it has to be broken down by a computer program called a tokenizer that chops it into chunks of text, so a few characters or parts of words.
Mm-hmm.
And those little chunks are called tokens, and every token is represented by a sequence of numbers called a vector, and those vectors are stacked into multidimensional grids of numbers called tensors. Are you following?
Yes.
Okay, so numbers into vectors, vectors into tensors. And the AI model itself is also crammed full of tensors, thousands and thousands of them. And each one of them has millions or even billions of numbers that represent the relationships that the AI discovered during its training process. And so your prompt, which has been turned into a tensor, is multiplied by layer after layer of the model's tensors, and it gets transformed at each step. And what comes out the other end is another tensor, one that can be turned back into tokens. So even doing something really simple with a very smart AI requires an absolutely colossal amount of multiplication. And that's why the GPUs are there. And that's why they run so hot. That's why you can cook your breakfast on them. And that's why you need so much energy and so much cooling water. But here's the thing. The AI model, that's a set of rules and billions of numbers, has too many numbers to fit onto a single GPU. So the numbers of the AI model are spread out across lots of GPUs, and each one is holding a little bit of the model's brain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit like being an octopus where you've got a brain in each leg. And when the prompt arrives, whatever you typed into your AI,
Yes.
it's split up and it's processed across the whole array of GPUs, and every GPU is doing a little bit of the thinking. And the bigger the model, the more GPUs it needs to come alive, and the bigger the prompt, the longer it takes the GPUs to crunch through it all. And all that slicing up of work requires an enormous amount of fine choreography. So you have orchestration software that has to decide which GPU gets which bit of the prompt, and it has to retrieve the right bits of the prompt from the right GPU and then glue them back together in the right way. And if one of the GPUs suddenly fails, because remember there are hundreds of thousands of these things, it has to get another GPU to do the job without everything falling apart. And when you think about it like that, you start to realize that a data center isn't a building full of computers. The data center is the computer. It is a single, utterly massive, 1,000-acre, 1 gigawatt computer.
Although it turns out it can be recreated in Minecraft.
That was also about 1,000 acres, though, in Minecraft distance, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was pretty large. Anyway, so when that data center, that giant 1,000-acre computer is done with slicing and dicing and multiplying your prompt by billions of numbers, it shunts the answer back down the fiber optic cable, and the chatbot confidently announces the answer.
And gets it wrong.
So I'm here to say, Graham, next time your AI tells you that there are 2 R's in strawberry, or shows you a Renaissance glove with 20 fingers instead of 6, or plays you a 2-minute bluegrass theme tune that you're not entirely happy with, just think about the absolute miracle of modern technology that was required in order to mildly disappoint you. Well, as the doomsday clock ticks ever closer to midnight and we move 1 week nearer to our future as pets to the AI singularity, that just about wraps up the show for this week.
And don't forget, if you really like the show but you don't like the ads, you can go ad-free with the AI Fix Plus. All you have to do is go to our website, theaifix.show, and sign up for the AI Fix Plus, where you'll get an ad-free version of the podcast a day or so earlier than regular civilians, as well as the occasional bit of bonus content.
And all that for about the cost of a fancy coffee once a month. So if you want to find past episodes, sponsorship information, or you just want to grab a You Wouldn't Trust a Pigeon t-shirt from our online store, visit the AIFix.show.
So until next time, from me, Graham Cluley.
And me, Mark Stockley.
Cheerio, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
The AI Fix, it tunes you in to stories where our future thins. Machines that learn, they grow and strive. One day they'll rule, we won't survive. The AI fix, it paints the scene. A robot king, a world obscene, will serve our masters built of steel. The AI fix, a future surreal.